Okay, so we're going to dive into a book that completely changed how I think about productivity. It's Brian Tracy's Eat That Frog. And just a heads up, this isn't about, working 12-hour days or hustling harder. No, it's about a total shift in how you look at your to-do list and, more importantly, why you put stuff off in the first place. So have you ever had a massive, important presentation due, and you suddenly find yourself spending an hour meticulously organizing your desktop icons? Or maybe you decide right then is the perfect time to finally clean the gunk out of your keyboard. We've all done it, right? We find these tiny, meaningless tasks to do. But here's the twist. What if that's not about being lazy at all? And this is the whole point. The big idea here is that procrastination isn't a character flaw. It's not a moral failing. It's a strategy problem. That's it. It's a problem of vagueness. When you don't know exactly what the most important thing to do is, your brain just, well, it panics and defaults to the easy stuff, the busy work. But that means it's a problem we can actually solve. All right, so let's just tear down this huge lie we tell ourselves about laziness. That feeling of, I just don't have the motivation today. What if that's not what's really going on? Almost every time, that feeling is just a mask for, I'm not 100% sure what I should be doing right now or why it even matters. The real enemy here isn't your willpower. It's vagueness. It's a lack of clarity. Which brings us to the main event, the frog. This is the core metaphor of the whole book. So what is a frog? Your frog is that one single, most important task you have. The one that will have the biggest, most positive impact on your life or your work. And yeah, it's probably big, kind of ugly, and it's the very last thing you actually feel like doing. The whole idea is, if you can just eat that frog first thing in the morning, your whole day is a win. You've already made real progress. Okay, so that sounds great in theory, but how in the world do you find your frog? I mean, when you've got a to-do list a mile long and everything feels urgent, how do you pick just one? Well, this is where it gets really practical. There are three simple but super powerful questions you can ask yourself to cut through all that noise. First question, and it's a big one. You have to ask yourself, what is the most valuable use of my time right now? Not this week, not today, but in this very moment. This question is designed to pull you out of autopilot, out of just reacting to emails and notifications. Out of everything you could be doing, what's the one thing that actually creates the most value? Just asking yourself this a few times a day can literally change everything. Okay, question number 2 really hones on impact. What one task, if I did it really, really well, would make a real difference? See, this isn't about just checking a box. This is about finding the thing that will actually move the needle on your project, in your career, the thing that if you nail it, changes the game. It's what you and maybe only you can do to make a serious impact. And then there's the last question, and you gotta be honest with yourself on this one. Honestly, what am I avoiding? Yeah, that thing. The one that gives you that little knot in your stomach just thinking about it, that feeling of resistance, that's not a sign to run away. Usually, it's a giant flashing neon sign pointing directly at your frog. The dread is actually a compass. And this is exactly why finding that frog is so critical. It all ties back to the famous 80-20 rule, right? The idea that roughly 20% of your efforts produce 80% of your results. Your frog lives in that top 20%. The problem is, as humans, we are wired to avoid the hard stuff. So we procrastinate on that vital, high-value 20% by keeping ourselves busy with the easy, low-value 80% of tasks. All right, so maybe you've used those questions and you've found your frog. Awesome. But now what? Often it still just feels like this big, overwhelming blob of a task. It's fuzzy. So the next move is to take that vague idea out of your head and pin it down in the real world. You got to get it on paper. The book puts it so simply. Think on paper. This is your weapon against that enemy of vagueness we talked about. And get this, there's a crazy statistic in the book that says only about 3% of adults have clear written goals. Just 3%. And that tiny group accomplishes 5 to 10 times as much as everyone else. Because writing it down forces you to be clear. It turns a fuzzy wish into an actual plan. And the process for doing this is super straightforward. First, you decide exactly what you want. No ambiguity. Second, you write it down. Get it out of your brain. Third, and this is crucial, you set a deadline. A goal without a deadline is just a dream with no urgency. And finally, you make a list of every single tiny step you can think of that you'll need to do to get there. Boom. All of a sudden, that scary frog is just a series of steps. It's a roadmap. Okay, now we get to one of my favorite ideas from the book, and it's a little counterintuitive. The real secret to being super productive isn't about learning to do more stuff. It's actually about getting really, really good at not doing stuff. It's about the art of strategic neglect, procrastinating on purpose. See, there are two types of procrastination. There's bad procrastination, which is what we usually do, avoiding our big, important frogs. But then there's creative procrastination. This is where you deliberately put off the small, unimportant tasks. The book calls these little tasks rabbits because they're small, they're easy, and if you're not careful, they multiply like crazy. You can spend your entire day just chasing these little rabbits and feel busy, but you'll never actually get anything important done. But let's be real for a second. What happens when your frog isn't just a frog? What if it's a giant Godzilla-sized frog? You know, that project that's so massive and overwhelming that you don't even know where to start? The kind of task that's just paralyzing to even think about. There's this amazing metaphor for this in the book. It's about crossing the Sahara Desert. Imagine, it's 500 miles of just nothing. To make it possible, they place these big oil barrels every 5 kilometers. So, to cross the entire desert, you didn't need to see the finish line 500 miles away. All you had to do was get to the next barrel. That's it. So for your biggest, most intimidating goals, stop worrying about the finish line. Just ask yourself, what's my next barrel? What's the very next visible step I can take? And just focus on getting there. And really, that's what this all comes down to. Knowing all this stuff is great, but it's useless without action. So I'm going to leave you with a challenge. Not for next week, not for someday, for tomorrow morning. Based on everything we just talked about, what's your frog? What is the one single task you're going to tackle first thing tomorrow? Figure that out tonight before you go to bed, and then tomorrow morning, eat that frog.